Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the business session of the World Potato Congress 2022. I'm Marcel de Souza from the IPM Potato Group, and it's my honor to be chairing this very interesting session of the program. Just before we start, I'd like just to remind you to please turn off your mobiles or having them on silence, please. Thank you. Everybody that is in business is familiar with the famous 5-year plan that is so beloved of our investors and our banks. But jokes aside, it is a very important tool, the 5-year plan, because it's when you can stop to look at your business and dream about the future, see if what you're doing is relevant, what you're doing in the future is relevant. And as we also know, it's notoriously difficult to get it right. So, and this is the theme of this session, where will the potato business be in 5 years' time? And to help us stir up our thoughts, we have 3 very experienced and knowledgeable people speaking here this morning from topics that will range from the local Irish perspective on the business, through to the European perspective, through to the seed perspective and novel technologies in breeding, and which is so essential, really, for the attainment of food security in the future. So, before I continue, I'd just like to say that it is the potato business. Of course, they'll be facing lots of challenges that we talked about today, but that looking at all the presentations that have been done so far, we can see that definitely is, I certainly am very proud to be working in this sector rather than other sectors. I would like to introduce our first speaker. Ross Keogh is a director of Keogh's, a very well-known company here in Ireland. It's an international company too, but here in Ireland, and the perspective that he's going to be talking about is the Irish perspective. They're very well known for their premium crisps with very innovative and unique flavors. They also supply premium fresh produce to the market and other products, but the DNA of the company and the family is the potato. The family has been farming in North Cork, County Dublin now for over 200 years. So you will agree with me that they must know a thing or two about potatoes, having seen it all over this period. He also must know a thing or two about running, because I understand he won the fun race this morning. So we'll learn about the secret of that. So Ross will be sharing then his passion and whether the future is bright. So Ross, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel, for that introduction. And just to let everybody in on a little secret, the run this morning, it was on at 6:30, and I got up at 4 o'clock and I had a big bowl of potatoes. And it gave me loads of energy. I was able to push through to the finish line. So, a little bit of a cheat. But lovely introduction there from Marcel. And my name is Ross Keogh. I'm from the farm family of the Keoghs in North County Dublin. So this is us here in the present day. This is my uncle Tony on the left-hand side, myself, his son Derek, my brother Tom, and my father Peter. Now in my mind, my father Peter should be up here today speaking to you because he has taught me everything I know up to the present day, and he's a hell of a lot more to teach me if I listen. He says I have selective lack of hearing, but he should be up here today, but alas, you're stuck with me. But who did Who did he learn everything from? He learned everything from his father, Peter Sr. So this is Peter Sr. back in the 1950s. And he's harvesting grain. And this is where the core to the current family and what we do came from. So quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. So to forever put the best quality product into whatever you're doing. And we've always done that. It's the ethos to the business up to the present day. Up to the present day, we've moved from grandfather here, harvesting grain, up to this is us harvesting potatoes, and we've just moved into a state-of-the-art packing facility. We're about to move into it in full capacity in the next couple of weeks. So it wasn't always that way. Myself, my brother and my cousin came into the business roughly 2008, a couple of years before that. And this is what we were looking at. So be aware, forecasting that we were going to have a serious decline in fresh potato consumption. So this is not a great place to start. I'm going to come into it. There's going to be then, instead of my father and Tony, it's going to be another 3 of us coming into the business. So what are we going to do about it? And why was this going to happen? So the main culprits. So what were we facing into? People were traveling a lot more. They're eating the more Mediterranean-style dinners. They're eating a lot more Oriental. So you have the Uncle Ben's and Dolmio, and also that proverbial pain in the back of every carbohydrate, the Atkins diet. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. So what were we going to do? So we're looking at the industry. We're looking at the fresh potato sector. Where are we going to go with the business? So at the time when we were younger, we used to spend our summers labeling up potato bags with this label that Dad and Granda and Tony designed years ago on every bag, cream of the crop, Peter Keown Sons. So what we did in 2008, we rejigged our brand and we brought out some new fresh design, some innovative packaging here for time-poor people where you can microwave your potatoes. Lovely and fresh on the retail shelf. We had an organic range and a healthier selenium-enriched offering for the consumer. So from this, we held on to our market share. We increased our market share and we moved forward with the business. This led us on then in 2011. We've seen a niche in the crisp market and we launched a premium crisp to the market. Still to that ethos, quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. The best quality put into the bags. And this has taken off and gone really well for us. So it brings us forward to the present day, where we are now the #1 brand of potato in Ireland with our different range of potatoes. Then we have an innovative multi-pack of crisps that's in actual potato bag. Onto a crinkle range, we actually do a range of popcorn now as well. One of the most recent flavours that we've launched is Casa Blue cheese and caramelised onion. And we're now the fastest growing crisp brand in the country. And there's another string to our bow. Tomorrow evening, you'll hopefully all be in the Guinness Storehouse. We collaborated with Guinness, and we have 2 specific flavours, a flame grilled steak and Guinness and oyster, that we're absolutely honoured that we're able to collaborate with such an iconic brand. So that's a little bit about the business and where we are today and the reason why I'm up speaking in front of you today. So the future is bright. Get down to what we need to talk about here today. Now, I have to say that since I've been writing this presentation, I've rewrote it over several times and several times again, with all the curveballs that have been thrown at us in the last number of months and years. But every time, call me the eternal optimist, but actually call me a realist. The future can and will be bright for the potatoes, no matter what happens. So let's actually have a look at what we have in our hands. We have a nutritional superfood. It's got amazing environmental credentials, which a lot have been talked about today, sustainability and the likes. It is actually a really good value proposition, and it's super versatile. So we'll deep delve into a few of these. So we have a nutritional superstar in our hands. So I'm going to just compare it to pasta and rice now in a couple of slides. There we go. So we've less calories and carbohydrates than pasta and rice. Now, we still have enough, though, that I was able to push on and finish that race today. So really low in fat, pretty much 0% fat, dietary fibre, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, more potassium than a banana, vitamin C, B3, B6, B9. So excellent nutritional values with the potato, the product that we're all here today for. Environmental credentials. So Cedric said earlier, he has a slightly different figure of the water consumption from potatoes, but I looked at mine and took it from several different sources. But potatoes, 1 kilo, 287 litres of water produce a kilo of potatoes. There you have pasta, 1,849. Rice, 2,500. Now, the cohort of people that we're actually trying to sell our potatoes to these days is Gen Z and millennials. This environmental and sustainability is key to that cohort. And all these figures here keep us in an excellent position going forward with what we sell. So we have CO2 emissions as well. So 2.9 kilos of CO2 per kilo produced, which is actually quite good in running things. But all these figures we can actually work on, and we can keep reducing all these figures down. And that's what this Congress is about, sustainability and so forth. And we'll be able to work on these and get that figure down further and further. So this leads on to Gen Z and millennials, as I was saying. So on the left here, you currently have what's on a multitude of packaging. You'll have your calories, your fats, your saturates. In the not so distant future, we could have to put something like this onto our packaging, sustainability rating. And this little arrow here, when it comes down to potatoes, will be quite far up here and will leave us in very good stead going into the future. Now, on to value proposition. And what do I mean by value proposition? This is a particular one that I actually wouldn't mind speaking to each individual in use one-to-one and get your own opinion on it. We'll go down the road and have a cup of coffee. And we'll banter out and we'll both have opinions on it, but we'll all probably come to the same answer that potatoes are extremely good value proposition. We can't ignore the elephant in the room of cost increases on nearly every touch point that we have. The consumer, the household spending is going up and up and up. But the potato then is in really good set. It's in a really good position going forward. If households are squeezed, the potato is always put back on the table. And just by the way, that cup of coffee that the two of us sat down and had cost about €7. Currently, the large bag of potato on the retailers in Ireland costs about €6. That bag will feed a family of 5 for about a week and a half with potatoes. So just putting the cost of things into a bit of perspective. Now, versatility. So potatoes, with so many varieties, dishes, they're the most versatile of foods. So we have thousands of varieties. I think it's nearly into 7,000. I love my roasties, love a bit of mash, and currently we're in early potatoes and we're steaming them, and that's on the dinner table at the moment at home. So they're super versatile. You can create hundreds of dishes. I don't know another product that you can actually do so much with. So it's an amazing food. We have a superfood and all. But let's have a look at the Irish market for a moment. Fresh consumption in Ireland is falling currently. So what is happening? I'm going to look at a few key points here. So we're exiting COVID, and that is actually a bit of a factor. Now, are potatoes too versatile for their own good? Are our target audience engaging? Do they even have the basic skills? And finish off, we need some sort of innovation. So let's start. So exiting COVID is a major factor. So back in January, we came out of lockdown, and people threw open their doors and embraced the outdoor again. So the dinner in the evening time was secondary. They were going outside. If it was good weather, they were not staying inside. And also, you have a cohort of people now that are working remotely from home. That means they're in their house all day. You could have one person upstairs working, another person in the kitchen on their laptop. Come 5 o'clock in the evening, are you going to stay in your house, or you want to go outside if it's nice? And you're probably after grazing all the way through that day. What I mean by that is you've been picking, you're very close to your refrigerator, and all of a sudden you've ate what you want for the day. So this is a factor, but I do think it is a bit of a transient factor. I think that people will go back to their old routines, and it's just a bit of a matter of time. So potatoes, too versatile, too many options, causing consumer confusion. Now what I mean by this is, are we presenting the potatoes to the consumer properly? Nearly every supermarket that I go into, and my wife hates when I do this, I people watch. I go into the potato section and I watch what people are doing. I watch how they're shopping, I do it in the crisp section, and I do it in the pasta and rice section. Let's say I people watch it in the supermarket. So, what are they doing? If you've got a consumer that's going in there and they don't know exactly what they want, they are looking at a minefield. Now, this is a picture of our product in a supermarket, and this is a picture of the same supermarket after we have rejigged the offering. So, what we have over here is the product is all laid out correctly. We've shelf talkers. We're telling the consumer what the product is and what dish it can actually make. Is it floury? Is it waxy? Is it fluffy? So you need to educate the consumer. Too often than not, I've seen them coming into the potato section, dumbfounded, and they walk straight through. Whereas they go down the rice and pasta aisle, they'll grab a jar, they grab pasta, they grab some meat, and away they go. So it's all done from the thinking is taken over. We need to try and do the same across the board for the industry. So our target audience is not engaging. This is a big piece. So a couple of stats here, 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds like to experiment with cooking. This is great, this looks like a good stat, but they do not like preparing raw vegetables, and it creates too much washing up. And potatoes are looked like they're dull and fattening. And then this bottom one, 28% take cooking inspiration from their parents. This is actually dwindling over the ages. So if you imagine your parents taught you how to cook, and then you have to teach your kids how to cook and so forth, and it's getting diluted as the generations go on. So people don't have the necessary skills, and we'll get into that in a minute. What's happening here is we're not engaging with our consumer, the consumer of the future. We're not engaging with the youth. We need to come back down onto their level. So we're taking the potato for granted to a certain extent. Because it's such a wonder food, it's an amazing product. We all know this, but the general public out there do not know this. So just like our potato products and our crisp products, we would have got down and we would have marketed them and talked to a consumer. We need to do that with the potato industry. We need to talk to the consumer, teach them that it's such a superfood, so nutritious, and so forth, as you've seen today. So we're actually we've started to do that, and we're in Ireland, we're in the third year of a potato promotion, albeit there is increase in consumption there, but that's the COVID increase that we see, and we're coming back out of it. So the increase in figures you see there is literally from COVID, but the stats that we're getting back from the promotion are showing that dull and boring are turning the other way. It's coming in our favour. So we're doing it, and it's slowly working, but we need to do it on a much bigger and faster level for all of us for this industry. So the last one, our target audience has an issue when it comes to necessary tools to prepare a meal. So this is a big one. So do you lack the skills to cook from scratch? Our cohort here, Our cohort here on the left-hand side, 18 to 34-year-olds, by far the biggest section of this, stating that they do not have the necessary skills to be able to cook a meal. So that's a serious issue. So what do we do? What do we need? We need innovation, but we need a different type of innovation. And I'm going to coin a new phrase now today and say we need a back to basics innovation. And we actually need to go back to grassroots. And what I mean by grassroots, I'll explain now in a bit of an analogy to Gaelic football. On Sunday, I was invited to the Europe TAT reception here in the RDS, and I was speaking with several of you delegates, and it had been at the Dublin and Kildare football final. And it was a bit of a one-sided game. Dublin bet Kildare by half-time. But they didn't always win like that. Now, just if people here do not know about Gaelic football, it's our national sport. It's at the core of what we do. It's in every school, town, around the country. It brings villages together, and each county has a team that during the summer play against each other to play in the All-Ireland Championships. So Dublin bet Kildare, which is great because I'm a Dub, but it wasn't always that way. Back in the noughties, the Dubs were coming up short. Now, Dublin has the biggest population in the whole of Ireland, so they have the most amount of players to pick from, but they were still coming up short. And I'm going to compare that to the potato. The potato was the #1 carbohydrate, but we're losing sales. What Dublin did was the Dublin County Board went back to grassroots. They went back to the clubs. They taught the children. They gave them the necessary skills and education to come forward and perform at the highest level. And lo and behold, several years later, Dublin won 5 GAA championships in a row. And hopefully I'll win another one now this coming year. So what's that? What do we need to do? Let's bring in that grassroots back and apply it to potatoes and veg and so forth. Into schools, we need to go back to the schools, and we need to go to grassroots in schools, and we need to bring back in cooking. Currently in Ireland, home economics is not mandatory, and it should be at the junior and senior level. If we do this, we will be able to give these children and the children after them the necessary tools to actually get this product we're trying to sell. It's such an amazing product, and be able to actually cook it, no problem. It is a big issue. So from that, we will then have a generation going forward that's much healthier families that cook with potatoes and vegetables far more than before. And that curve that you seen from Barbie at the start, that we were coming down like this, we'll gain back our market share. We'll actually increase it, and the future of the potato can be very bright. So in finishing, I myself think that the future of the potato can be very bright. Yes, there is a few caveats to it, and if we work on them, it can be a very, very optimistic future for us all here today. And I, for one, I'm delighted and honoured to be part of the Potato Federation and part of the potato industry. And I'll finish on that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you very much. Well done. Good stuff. Thank you, Ross. Yeah, that's a very informative presentation, which shows us that innovation in products, as well as innovation in communication and engagement of customers, is a key component, hopefully, to the increase of potato consumption in the future. I'll move on to our second speaker of the day, Tigran Richter. Tigran is a director of Noreca in Germany, and has a background in science and lecturing in the past, and has a great, despite his experience internationally, he has a particular insight into Eastern Europe. He has recently been appointed president of Europatat, our prestigious European Potato Trade Association. And it is in this capacity that he will address us today, speaking about the challenges and opportunities for the potato business in Europe. Tigran, please. Thank you.
I think Ross did well. That makes it easier, just to get a bit relaxed. We don't need ties. Before I start with the presentation, I would like to use the opportunity to say thank you. Thank you to you, because I understand in the room are not only members of Europatat, the organization I'm representing today, which is very good because now we can share the European perspective with other people from other parts of the world. I would like to say thank you to our Irish hosts. I think it's fantastic what they did. They gave us the opportunity to come together. And I like the idea yesterday said, spoken out, a stranger is a friend you do not know yet. If anybody in the world would act like that. And I would like to thank for the opportunity to talk about what the topic today is, to introduce Europatat to you, and to share our view of the future potato business. Short about me. It was said, I have a special insight. I'm born in East Germany. I did my studies in Moscow 5 years in former times in Soviet Union. In 1989, the wall came down in Berlin. It gave me the opportunity to get a postgraduate study with the British Council in London for 2 years. And in 93, I joined potato business. So I'm kind of dinosaur now today. Who are we? Europatat is a fantastic organization, and we actually are celebrating our 70th birthday. 70 years of representing the European potato trade. 63 members in 20 countries, European countries. Many, many members. And we are representing actually the potato trade chain. Everybody in there, starting from breeding, packing, trading, to the retail, to the industry, to export. These are our members. And the members yesterday actually voted me to be their new president. So overnight I had to make a new presentation. No, obviously not. Special thanks to the former president, Gilles Fontaine, and to the secretariat, which helped, obviously, to produce and to make that presentation, to be able to present it to you today. Setting the scene. Where are we? If 5 years ago you would have asked us, what do you think where you are in 5 years? We would have uploaded a whole bunch of charts proving to you that we know where we are going to be. Today, it's crystal ball. We will talk about why that is. We do have some trends we believe will be continuing, but we have to talk about short-term influences which make the future uncertain. So it is not as easy anymore to talk about 5 years perspectives. This is a chart of the production of the EU plus UK. And you can see we have a general trend of decline in hectares and in tonnage. There is an argument to it. Please do not forget, in the 2000s, we got new members in the EU, and they are in those statistics now. And actually, the hectares are falling because technology went better, storage got better, better machinery, better plant protection. So the increase of yield is one thing which could compensate the loss of hectares, and the use of potatoes became different. One example from former East Germany. East Germany had 320,000 hectares of potatoes. Today, it's 70,000, 25%. And don't think we do have enough potatoes, for sure. Yeah? So that trend obviously is seen here. And if we go to the last years here, you would think that decline is not that obvious. We will come a little bit later to it. We had COVID years, and they are influencing those statistics into another picture, but the general trend is there that we have a decline. Yields, same thing. If you take the total of the EU, and remember what I told you, we have countries entering the EU and the statistics getting better and better in yields. That is this line here. And we have the EU4 here, Belgium, France, Germany, Netherlands, the big producers of potatoes. Maybe in the future Poland has to be in here, and countries like Romania. But you see, that is a decline, but very much influenced here. And that is another topic we will talk about, that is climate change, in inverted commas. But yes, we see here problems with short-term weather events, which have obviously an influence on the production in terms of tonnages. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, because it is not just a European problem. Can we predict the future? I was already saying that not very clear if we can. We did that, obviously. Like it was said, companies have to do it. We as an organization tried to do that as well. But how problematic it is shows this example. Yeah, we were trying to make a forecast in April, minus 7.5%, average EU4. Different countries giving us certain response. That is from members. Yeah, so it's us. We tried to do a prognosis. That is what we then thought could be the truth, because the seed companies were saying, we basically sold the same amount of seed, so the hectares have to be somewhere. Yeah, so the production should be in the soil. So we said, okay, let's take that figure. But we understood already that is a bit of a crystal ball. That it was what it was at the end. So, how correct are statistics? How correct are prognosis? Yeah? If we, as a professional organization, have that type of different figures. Actually here, a special thanks to Cedric Porter of World Potato Congress as well, because he is afterwards always presenting the statistics, and we believe those figures, because they are coming from the industry and quite reliable, and they are a big assistance in doing these type of prognosis. I told you that we have a stable kind of tendency in the market, which we believe will stay in the future as well. And that is a decline in fresh potatoes, use of fresh potatoes, and, next slide you will see, what will grow instead. But if we look here, yeah, France, just two charts. We don't want to go too much into statistics, but here you see that you would think, oh, in Germany, more fresh potatoes used. Maybe the trend is going up. No, that is COVID times. People were locked home. What happened? They had to eat home, so they were eating fresh potatoes. So we believe it's a temporary element here, and the general trend is still the decline. But what grows instead? Processing products. Very clear. Yeah? And even we see here a problem. The general trend is clear. And what is that? Disrupted international supply chains, no export of frozen fries out of Europe. A big problem to the industry, yeah? And to the trade, obviously, as well. Yeah? Beside our business and beside the general trend, we can see and we still believe that that will be the trend of the future as well. So fresh potato use will go down, processed products of all kinds will go up. We have short-term impact. We have a very demanding target, yeah, to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. Therefore, Europe has set a Green Deal. Here we go. What does it mean? We will not talk about all this. You see, it's a very complex question to get to that type of target. But what does a Green Deal mean? We have now a sustainability discussion. And the word sustainability is a new fashion word. You know, everybody knows it, everybody talks about it. What does it really mean? We would say sustainability, we are doing that already over the last 20 years, over the time I can think. We are reducing the use of chemicals. We are reducing the use of fertilizers. We are not in excessive agriculture anymore for a long time. So are we already doing it? And did we already meet the targets? Those targets will be set new now. We have a public discussion about it. And that's not easy, because first of all, we need really to understand, what do we understand under sustainability? And is it good enough that we tell others, yeah, like in Breeder, here is a good new variety, sustainable production, low input varieties. Is that good enough, or do I need to do something myself? Do I have to turn my car park into electric cars? Question mark. Yeah, so the question is wider and broader than on the first glance. Yeah, and I think the industry understands, and our members understand, that we have to change. We have to change. But how and in what time scale? Is it feasible? Can we do it? What society and markets are demanding? But this one here is a very, very important topic which we will have in discussion over the next years in our organization as well, and we will try to discuss how we can meet those targets. Another action plan, the organic action plan, organic farming. Look at this. There's a target for 2030 with 25% organic produce. We as business people at the moment look at each other and say, where is that market? We can't see it, because today organic is 5, 7, 8%, depending on the European countries. Yeah, our Scandinavian partners are a bit further. They have a bit more organics, other countries less, but in average. So we say, where is that market? Will that market be? Where will it come from? And who will produce it? Who will pay the price for it? Big question mark. We have a discussion about NGTs, new genomic techniques. You might know that at the moment, all those techniques fall under the GMO regulation in Europe, in the European Union, and that means full stop. No practical use. Can it stay like this? Do we have to have those NGTs as an instrument to solve the questions we have on the table? Public discussion again. Yeah? So all that is discussed in public. It takes time. Yeah? The European Union is not as quick sometimes as we like, but I'm sure at the end of the day we will come to something. Yeah? And it is important to have everybody who is involved in the business, in the market, in the value chains, from society to final consumer to producer, traders, as we are in that discussion, so that we come to solutions which are feasible for everybody. Look at this, consumer demands. Consumers say, 94% are saying, we want the industry to use less plastic. I'm just taking one topic. I could use many, but take just one. We want to have less plastic. Clear. Everybody would say, yes, fine, let's do it. What do we have as a contrary? More and more use of convenience food. That is what consumers are doing. We want to have less plastic, but we go in the shop and buy something plastic packed to have it in a microwave, 5 minutes ready. Contradiction. Yeah? And it's normal, but this is what is real. Other unpredictable events. As I said, nobody could know that we get a pandemic which will influence our business such severely over the last 2 years. Luckily enough, now we don't have a lockdown and we can meet again. No need for an explanation. We all know what we pay at the moment to produce. Yeah? And the car we have is one thing. The tractor, how much diesel is it taking? But field work has to be done. Unfortunately, those things happen. Nobody would have thought that that could be. And it has impact, severe impact, immediate impact and long-term impact. We will have to think for solutions for that. How will we help Ukraine to reestablish? How is food supply guaranteed? And not only for the Ukraine, but for other countries. We heard it already in other presentations. Yeah? Countries depending on the wheat supply. And at the end of the day, we have a farmer who has to do it. We are talking about something which in reality has to happen. So it has to happen in the fields. Farmers have to do it, and we have to think about to have them in the boat to decide strategies which we can be convinced of that they actually are able to implement it. Because we are talking about business at the end of the day, right? There has to be a return of investment. Potatoes is a very intensive, financially intensive crop. So farmers will not take the risk anymore if they have no guarantee that the money comes back. They will not pay it. They cannot pay it out of their own pocket. Yeah? So is it easier to produce wheat, which today might be very popular, not only from a money point of view? Are we losing territory here as potatoes? Big question mark. So what scenarios might we have? One, that is the trend we are seeing. And I'm convinced, we are convinced, that that trend will stay. Yeah, with innovation, product development, etc. We will see more processed, all kind of, like convenience food, I regard that as processed as well, all type of processed food. But we will have the impact of uncertainties. And we may now do a best guess. Nobody out of that crystal ball can tell us what will be in 2 years. Hopefully we will have no more conflicts. Hopefully we will have no more pandemics. But there's no guarantee for it. And still, we have to organize a market which is functioning. Because food is needed all the time. People need to eat. So we have distorted balances. Yeah? Regulation, and can the supply chain do it? Yeah? Market demand, production capacity, reality of production and consumer expectations. Yeah? I explained where the differences are and the conflicts. Civil society, long production model. Can we still have long production models in that uncertain world? Question mark. Obviously, each single business has to think of and take decision for their own business, very clear. But as an organization for the potato trade, we obviously try to evaluate and to discuss and to exchange and to think together what could be the right direction to take. There is no concrete answer, but that is what we need to do. We need to get those balances right. We have to get them balanced. That is important, because then we will stay successful in business. If the disbalance stays, somebody will lose on one or the other side. Yeah? And that is not going to work. And obviously, here comes Europatat again in the game. We are one of the players. We are trying to be a partner in that development. We are trying to be a market partner for civil society, for consumers. But for the business itself as well, so that farmers can still make a living out of it and that our companies are profitable as well. That is the target, and we believe that balances are important for that. And not only in Europe, not only in single countries. You see, we have a situation that conflicts, like we have at the moment, provoke protectionism. There is an immediate reaction that countries say, okay, let's secure ourselves first. Understandable reaction. But for the future, for markets, we are believing in international cooperation. We have global problems, we can solve them only globally. So there is another trend we are believing in. We believe in cooperation, in international cooperation, and that is why it's good that the room is full, that there are so many countries here, that we can exchange, that we can discuss, and that we can search for solutions for our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tigran. Thank you, Tigran, for this very thought-provoking presentation, and your first official presentation as president of Europatat. So we're privileged to witness that. Yeah, the view about what we are seeing in the markets, which is this, despite what COVID brought about in the last 2 years, this maybe false dawns regarding the increasing consumption of fresh potatoes. We can see that trend maybe going back to what we see normally, which is the opposite, increase in consumption of processed products. And as Tigran says, in the end, it's about the balance, because we can try to do all the other things, but we need the growers to be producing the potatoes profitably too. So one thing that I apologize, I actually neglect to inform at the beginning of the sessions, but I hope still time. We will be holding a kind of a panel discussion at the end. So they are being very, very good with their timings. So there's no time for questions anyway after the individual presentations. But the idea was actually not to have the questions until the end of the 3 presentations, in which we will try then to create a panel discussion for 20 minutes or so. So please do take your questions. I mean, the 2 presentations were very, very good and very informative. So please do take your questions, individual or for the panel later on. And you will have the space then at the end to put them to the speakers. Thank you. For our last speaker of the morning, we have Gerard Bax, who is the CEO of HZBC Holding. He's been with HZBC for over 20 years now. And before that, he has his background in, well, his interest has always been in business, but he also has a very strong background in breeding and a very thorough understanding of the seed sector. The scope of business of HZBC, of course, gives this wonderful global view. So it will be very, very interesting to hear his views of the future, which includes breeding and new technologies in breeding, which will be very, very important, again, for tackling food security in the future. So, Gerard, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel, for this introduction. And I would like to talk a little bit with you about the challenges that we have and opportunities that there are for our type of business. But first, a short introduction of our company, HZBC. We are basically a seed potato company, so we are breeding new potato varieties, and we are trading those seed potatoes or the genetics worldwide. And really, that worldwide is an important thing for us. And we are using the slogan of feeding the world. And of course, we are not feeding the entire world, but we try to contribute really to, let's say, the food supply in the world in whatever way we can. And that is what you see in our mission and also in our vision that you can find on our website. So that worldwide approach is for us quite important. And if I try to think of what is really, who has access to good seed potatoes, then I have to conclude there's only 20% really of, let's say, of all the potatoes that are grown on the world, those growers have access to really good seed potatoes. And that's not an issue for Europe, it's not an issue for America, but that's not where most of the potatoes are grown. Most of the potatoes are grown where the people are living, so that means in Asia and Africa. And there's where the supply is still very limited. So I would just one slide on, let's say, the limitations and why those limitations are there. And then after that, I would like to continue on how can we increase our genetics towards the future. If I look at the barriers that do exist in our world, then I just group them in 3 different barriers. If you say, why are seed potatoes from whatever countries not going to the others? It is either transport barriers or logistic barriers, you can say, political barriers or phytosanitary barriers. And if you talk about those 3, you can say with the transport barriers, the logistic barriers, that's quite obvious. If it is too far, it is too costly to get the seed potatoes there, they are not getting finally at the final destination. So this means that we have to work hard on more local production of good seeds. That's quite a challenge. It's not easy everywhere, but it is more possible than we probably think it is. But we have to work hard for that. And that's also what we try to do as a company. Can we produce more and more local seeds, the seeds locally, so that those farmers will have more access to those seeds? Another solution towards the future might be the true botanical seeds. If that is really going to take off, then we can be able, or we might be able to get those botanical seeds to the different places in Africa or Asia, and then local production and reproduction for a few generations can take place, and that will make sure that those farmers are getting much better seeds than they are getting today. A very important barrier that we are working with, we're dealing with in the world, is clearly the political barrier. And we are now in a period of deglobalization. And we've had a globalization for quite a while, and that has brought, I think, for everyone in the world quite an, let's say, good economical developments. But now, over the last years, we really do see the deglobalization, and that is not helping us at all. And what we want is much more open borders so that we can trade with our goods. That's not only for our goods, but for any goods. And what's very important is that the plant varieties can be protected by law in the different countries. That's clearly, it is very obvious that in those countries that have a clear law for the plant variety protection, there you see that there's much more investments in, let's say, improvements of the seeds for any crops, so also for potatoes, compared to those countries that have no plant breeders' rights. I dare to say that if politicians should not interfere in the total food supply, there was not that much of hunger in the world that we have today. It's a strong statement, I know that, but that's a statement that I make several times. And we have a lot of problems, of course, with all those interference of the politicians. I know it is impossible to have a world without politicians, but we have to really see how, let's say, how we can avoid all that interference. If the market can get, let's say, can be open and can find their own way, then there will be less hunger in the world. That's my statement. Another thing that I would like to say politically, farm-safe seed is used everywhere in the world, and we absolutely have to make sure that that will be allowed in any legislation that we are doing. It's already there for centuries, and is used. We should not limit the farm-safe seed, the use of farm-safe seed. Restrictions can be there, and we can build all kinds of conditions, but no limitation. The phytosanitary barriers, they do exist in our world, and if they are, let's say, if there's reasons for that, it's of course correct that they are there. But a lot of phytosanitary, let's say, barriers are in fact political barriers, and we should get rid of those barriers, in my perception. So then, in order to have a much more flow of our products over the world. So far, let's say let's say getting the material to the different places in the world. The second part, I would like to talk about really the increase of the genetic gain, because if you get better varieties, then we really can help also all those farmers worldwide to provide food to the people in those countries. And we really have to, the question is, how can we really increase those genetic gains? And we can, if we just continue to do what we are doing, then we are not increasing the genetic gain. Then we are, of course, breeders are, let's say, creating varieties a little bit better than the older varieties, but in potatoes, the genetic gain in general is very slow compared to other crops. There are reasons for that. You see that several technologies that we apply in potatoes, we take them also, look what is happening in other crops, and we try to apply that in the potatoes. But due to the fact that we are in the seed potato business, compared to other seeds markets, we are dealing with relatively small margins, and we are dealing with a complex genetics in potatoes. That makes that our genetic gain is relatively slow. But there are new technologies that create, let's say, opportunities for improved, for higher genetic gains. And I would like to talk about a few of those. Let's first, the fact that we started with genetic markers. Genetic markers are just, let's say, a tool that you can determine in the laboratory whether a certain trait is present in any material or whether it is not present. If you don't use it, you just have to put that material in the field, and then you have to, in the field, you have to see visually whether that trait is present in that variety or not. But if you have the marker, you can do that in a very early stage. Markers they're only, let's say, working with markers that started, let's say, small 20 or 15 years ago in different breeding companies. Nowadays, I think that the series breeders, they all have a package of the different markers and are using those markers. And it's becoming much more really a tool, but it takes a few years to develop, several years to develop those markers, and you continue to develop those markers. But before you can apply that in your breeding program and you get products out of that are getting to the market, then you are at least 10 years further. So basically what you do see now is that the varieties that are coming currently on the market have been based basically on those techniques. If you are using those markers, and you can really, that first of all does require quite a lot of research work, because you have to develop that. That is really work, hard, basic research work to develop those tools. But once you have developed them, you can select your material much quicker and much more effectively. So the total effectiveness of your breeding program will increase. It also helps you to improve your parent lines. Old breeding is crossing an existing variety with another existing variety. Now that's anything that I don't think that a lot of breeders currently are doing, because everyone has his own parent lines. And if you know very early which traits are present in the different parent lines, you can use those parent lines quicker. Now, and then the markers are, of course, not a solution for every solution, for every item. It is a very usable for the, let's say, qualitative traits, so the trait is existing or is not existing. If you talk about the quantitative traits like yield, etc., then that is depending on many genes, so you cannot use easily the markers for that. A second thing is knowing much more about your genetics and make sure that you can predict anything. If you make a classic crosses and you just wait to see what you get, that is not very effective. So if you know more about the genetics and you can make a certain crosses and you can say that with high chance I will get that and that product out of that, then you can work much more targeted, and that is will be let's say is a real improvement. Now, in certain crops, this is just daily work, and potatoes, basically, we're only starting with it. The genetic knowledge makes it also easier to use, let's say, the parents much easier. Earlier, I just mentioned that the fact that you can improve your parents, you can easily, if you use your parents earlier, so you don't have to wait till the parents has proven themselves very clearly. You can earlier use the parents, and due to that, also increase your total genetic gain. Number 4, I would like to mention here the new breeding technologies. That's an item where in different places in the world, still a lot of political discussions are going around. It is simply just a mutation technology. If we can apply those technologies, then we can just mutate existing material, and then you can improve certain traits of that existing material. Now, certain countries have allowed those technologies, but many countries doesn't at this moment, but we will see how that will develop, that discussion over the coming period. And the last thing I would like to mention on this range of technologies is the hybrid diploid breeding. The potato is a tetraploid crop. Due to that, it is genetically complicated. We are now able to make it a diploid crop, and then with that you can breed easier. And if you then apply the hybrid technology, that is proven that it all works, then we can be much more effective, and then you can also build on existing material. You don't have to just make a new process and wait and see what you get. You have what you get, and you add traits to that, and that's a technique which is used in many other crops. And if we really can get that doing, then we can improve our genetics much quicker. The graph that I show you over here is just what I a kind of prediction of what I think what is going to happen with the genetic gain. For years we had a relatively slow genetic gain, and I have to say, if you're looking for what are you indicating here, I haven't given any indication in figures over here, because you can debate what is let's say how do you express genetic gain. So I left it more in general, but it's the relativity that is important. And for years we had, let's call that traditional breeding, and we had a slow genetic gain in potato breeding. But I think if we really can work all with the markers, and we can be much more effective, our the gain will increase, and we will find quickly varieties with much better, let's say, higher yields, better resistances, etc. Those products are coming now on the market, and I think really you will see quick increases of, let's say, yields, resistances, etc. If then, let's assume that will, those products between now and let's say the coming decade is coming onto the markets, and then after that probably we can get varieties where we also have other technologies that we can apply. And then our genetic gain will increase a little bit further. Before the really hybrid breeding will really have an impact on all the varieties worldwide, that will take maybe really 2 decades before that material will be really on the market. But if we are there, then I'm quite sure that our genetic gain will increase strongly. And this is what we absolutely have to do, because potato is still a crop where we have a relatively low genetic gain. With that, what does this mean for the total business? And I talked about that the genetic gain, we had an extremely slow genetic gain in potatoes, but I think we can accelerate that, and that's a huge benefit for all users of the potatoes in whatever form. The genetic gain that we are creating in potatoes is still slow compared to many other crops. Those who are comparing it with cereals or with corn or whatever crop, they will see how quick varieties are, let's say, what the varieties, how they are improving compared to the older varieties, and what we are doing in potatoes is still, so we are still using varieties that are old, and that means that the new varieties are not perceived as that much better. But the need, especially of those technologies, let's say, improvements will have more impact, in my perception, on in the less developed countries than they will have on the developed countries, because of the fact that we still have a huge gap between what we bring on the market in those less developed countries compared to what we have on the developed countries. In the middle, I would like to highlight that those tools, they are costly. That is very obvious. So investments are really required, and that means that we can only continue to make those investments as long as also the prices of the seed potatoes reflect a little bit of that genetic gain. That is not, that's normal in many of the seed businesses, but it's not easy in the seed potato business. But we will have to work on that. That if you come with a really higher performing varieties, that part of that will be rewarded to the seed potato companies, so they can continue to invest that in the breeding for the future. But most important of it is that really that we make sure that all regions will have access to that improved genetics, and if we really can bring those improved varieties to the market, and we have the possibility to bring that to all the areas in the world, then we really can contribute to a much higher food supply for in our world. And that is, for me, the major conclusion that I would like to close with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerard. That's for that presentation. I was particularly interested in your view of the deglobalization and your regard for politicians. Obviously, we have closer to home. It's not a world issue, obviously, but it's important here in Ireland, which is being created, in our view, by politicians, which is this impediment in the supply of seed potatoes between the UK and Ireland. That's a very small thing, but just shows the impact of politicians there. Also, the innovation in the future, that is a transformational tool for the future of breeding potatoes. And that could be really a game changer if the technology is cracked. And of course, everybody that's involved in breeding, the protection of varieties and plant breeders' rights, and that's it's essential for us to be able to continue investing in that. So thank you, Gerard. I'd like now to open the floor to questions. I'm sure that's very provoking presentations there, and I'm sure the diversity of people here in the audience, we're going to have some good questions. We have microphones, 2 or 3 of them, and so if you have questions, please just lift your hands there. We start, and you can have questions for individual presenters or a question for the panel, and we see them giving their opinions on things. Thank you. Any questions? Well, I have a question. Okay, a question here, yeah.
Hello, this question is particular for Gerald. My name is Chris Kaspari, founder of Fresh Crop Limited in Kenya. We're currently exploring some trials in hybrid true potato seeds. I seen your presentation. I agree with the fact of speeding up the breeding process. It was presented to us as a way of cutting down the delay in getting seeds to the end user. What do you think the impact is going to be as a seed producer economically to us if we're going to be cutting down the actual cycles of seed that's going to be going through our farm before it gets to the end user?
Yeah, I can understand this question. What you say is depends. Let's say how you. No, I have to start. I like to distinct very clearly the hybrid potato breeding and the true potato seeds. You need a hybrid potato breeding in order to have proper true potato seeds, but true potato seeds is just the factor, is just a way to bring the genetics to another place, regardless how they are bred. So it is a true potato seed that is important. At the end, the question is, are we getting to a stage where seeds will be sown and potatoes will be harvested? Now, that is still a long way to go, in my perception, before we are at that stage. So we will have a stage where you put seeds in the ground, you harvest potatoes, and you multiply it for a few generations. So then the seeds is just a replacement of the, let's say, pre-basic seed production. So the multiplication, what is done by seed growers in the world, still has to be done. So I don't see, let's say, a real replacement of that. Only the technique how to start with, instead of pre-basic seed putting in the ground, at a certain moment you have to start with botanical seeds. And you can do that in a nursery, or you can do that in an open field. That still has to be sorted out, of course, what in which climate will be the best technique.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any more questions? Any questions valid? Well, I have okay, we have another question there.
Thank you. I have a question for us. You mentioned in your presentation that the sale of table potatoes here in Ireland have decreased by 28% in the last 20 years or so. And you also mentioned that you had an idea about that we could create new consumers. So we have to take a new generation in the food of the potato food world. How will you imagine to do that here in Ireland?
Okay, the 28% was what was forecast by Borbia back between 2008 and 2010. That total amount hasn't happened. We've turned that around slightly. But how are we going to do that? We need, as I said, we need to engage with that consumer. And basically, what we have is a consumer that is not cooking, as I was saying. They're not able to cook. What we have is potentially a takeaway, ready meal generation that's going to be unhealthy going forward. This needs to be assessed. It's for the whole vegetable industry as well. If you get people and they're not afraid to, like one of the stats was that people they think they're too much of a hassle. I think that's actually that they don't know how to prepare them in the first place. They don't have the raw skill in the first place to be able to create the dishes and to use potato as raw material. As I said, it's a super food. It's super healthy for you. We really need to be pushing that. And if we get in front of that cohort, we'll be able to turn that around, and we just need to do it via marketing. We need to engage with them on social media platforms, in retail level, on television, on radio, YouTube. We do all these things, and I'm pretty sure that we can turn it around a nice bit.
Thank you. We have another question here, Gerard.
Gerard Croft, question for Gerard. Gerard, there's quite a bit of cooperation within the world for exchange of varieties to use as parents for breeding. Do you foresee, as you said in your presentation, there's an awful lot of investment for genetic markers, which are obviously going to be a keystone going forward throughout the world for breeding. Do you foresee that there'll be some cooperation globally for exchange of genetic markers rather than lots of research institutes around the world doing the same research to get duplicates of similar markers?
Yeah, so the question whether we will exchange the markers, developing those markets and having those markets, that is the property of the individual breeders, and there's a lot of research work to be done to get a marker, and of course, as this is one of the major parts of your, let's say, the tools of your company, you're not easily going to exchange that with the others. So you can do that if you have good agreements with others, but I don't see an open platform where the markers will be exchanged. Because then I think that the question is who's going to develop the markers in the future if that creates easy access for the orders. Markers is anything that is left within the companies, and I think it should also be left in the companies and only exchanged to those where you have a very, let's say, maybe an exchange of 2 markers with each other or something like that. So you give anything and you take anything. That is still possible, but I don't see an open market for the markers, and don't think it should be like that.
Thank you, Gerard. We have another question here, please.
Hello, good morning. My name is Andrzej Trudowski, and although I do not have any specific question, I would like to express one thing here at that forum. My great thanks for inviting me here. I do not represent any particular body or organization, but I was involved in the last 25 or even more years in the potato industry in Poland and in Central Europe. And I would like to express my great and sincere thanks to Guillaume Lennon and organizers to invite me here, although I'm retired now, and you allowed me to attend this great meeting. And my world is still potato world. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here and attend the sessions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome. We have another question here.
Yes, Tigran, I want to congratulate you as the new president of Europatat.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, as you come from the breeding sector yourself, what's the role that you think Europatat can take to maybe lobby is the word for the use of new genetic technologies in Europe?
Yeah, that's a good question. That is slippery surface. One has to be careful giving answers. No, obviously, we are a breeding company ourselves I'm representing, and yes, we do research in that area like all the other, serious companies are doing. But you see, I take it a bit wider. It is not just a question for the breeders, because at the end of the day, the public has to accept it. So if I'm looking on the organization I'm representing now, going back to Europatat, yeah, we have companies who are actually buying and selling product which comes from farmers. So they are packing it, they are selling it to retail, they are selling it to industry, and the whole value chain will work only if actually the final consumer will accept that that method can be used and that the product on the market will come by using that type of method. That is very important. So we have to lobby all together. So it's not just a question of lobbying by seed companies or by breeders. Yeah? Obviously, we are in the beginning of the value chain, and we have to offer a new product, which is better, as Gerard said, than the previous varieties. And we believe that maybe this was a mistake in the past by not having a very correct discussion in the past. We discussed black and white. And I would have preferred if we had a discussion like there is a gray existing as well. Yeah, because new genetic techniques is not just new genetic techniques. And we had a polarization between so-called NGOs, all against, and we had all those breeders who are all in favor. And I think it needs explanation. It needs really explanation. What are we talking about? Explain to the public, explain even to the final consumer that he gets an understanding what type of techniques is it, what are we actually in favor of using, because by far we are not in favor of any technique which would be possible scientifically. That's not the case. Therefore I think it is important to have a discussion. The discussion is opened now. I think it's very good that the European Commission, gave the floor again to the public hearing, saying, okay, we have a public consultation with all stakeholders. Let's talk new about what is NGTs, what benefits it can have, and how should be the regulation of that. There needs to be a regulation, it's clear. It's a question of what type of regulation, but I believe at the end of the day, And if crises are coming more extreme, the public opinion will change more quick than we expect. Because at the end of the day, we need to have food security as an argument as well. Therefore, I think there is a balance again. Have it in balance between those who are today against and those who are in favor today, and let's see where we can have a balance and where is a compromise in the middle, that gray, as I say, which could be feasible for the society.
Thank you. We have another question?
Yes, hello, my name is Jacco, and I have a question about talking potato as food. Do you see, as a breeding company, or the potato as an energy giving for starch and the carbohydrates, or for its full nutritional value on your plate, not only with the potato, but also with the crops, and how that is relating to the breeding company, and telling the story about the potato? Are you seeing it as an energy giving mainly for the starch and that kind of things, or for the full nutritional value? I mean, that makes sense in my opinion.
Maybe we want to all of the speakers.
Yeah.
Maybe Ross could start with that answer, actually.
Well, this morning we did the run. That was sponsored by Potatoes USA and the Super Fuel, as what they're pitching it from, which it totally is. From my perspective, I supply retail and I'm direct to consumer. But yes, I think Cedric said before, there's nearly no waste in potatoes. You can make so many different products from them. On our farm, we have fresh potatoes. We have our crisping varieties. Some of our potatoes go for processing as well, the ones that don't make the grade for retail. And then we also have potatoes that go for cattle feed. I don't ever call them waste. That is still a product. The cattle are still eating them. That is not a waste product. So we have zero waste from our product. So it's such a versatile product that we said. And Cedric pointed up and he showed all the different products that you can create from it. And MPD-wise, you can see we did the crisps. You see the Doug, the potato milk. That's a new one. I've tried that a few times. My one does not taste as good as that one. Not yet, anyway. But there's endless possibilities. There's so many different products that are not even thought of or created yet. So, yeah, it truly is very versatile as a product.
Maybe to add one thing. Most of the people are not aware about the ingredients of potatoes and how valuable they are. Vitamins, proteins, etc., etc. There are many more. So that is, again, a black and white discussion. Potatoes make fat because they have a lot of starch. Rubbish. Sorry, I'm taking the shortcut here. So it is, again, important to explain to the public how valuable that food is, actually. And the percentage of production on a hectare in terms of input and output is enormous. There are very, very few crops which can actually compete with potatoes here. And one other thing, just a convenience food, a ready-made meal, is not necessarily not a fresh product. That is, again, black and white discussion. I'm really not in favor of that. There is convenience food innovation which is dealing with absolutely fresh potatoes which have all the ingredients in there still. So I think we have to be open and to be ready to learn more about the product. And we have the job, and actually Europatat is doing lobbying knowledge to the final consumer. What is that type of product? And if they are lazy to peel, okay, take a ready meal, but it is still a good product.
Would you like to add anything else? Or?
No, if the question was also partly what you as a breeding company, how you're looking at it. And it's very clear that for any value chain, and we have, of course, in potato, all different value chains depending on which parts in the world you are acting with, what are the final consumers where you're talking about. But you have to develop those varieties that are finally fit in that value chain for all the players in the value chain. But the consumer is there a very, very important part of. But of course, it needs also to be produced by the farmers, etc. But all those consumer aspects, and that's absolutely not only starch, it's taste, it is the healthy aspects of those potatoes for big parts of the world. there's where we have to pay attention to, and we do pay attention to there as a breeder. We have all kinds of tools to measure those traits.
Thank you. Well, we have maybe time for just a couple of questions more. We're getting there. So, and then we have another one in the back as well. Yeah.
Very quick question. We're seeing a lot of food poverty and poverty globally. Do we think that the rise in processed potatoes is in some way linked to that? And by that I mean processed crops and foods are often quicker and cheaper to cook as opposed to fresh cooking. They take less energy, so 30 seconds, 5 minutes in a microwave compared to half an hour in the oven.
Well, again, maybe we start the other way now. Start with Gerard and go back to Ross.
Yeah, can we make it more easier the total crop to let's say if you don't want to make it a processed potato, but just as a fresh potato, you can play with the structure of the cells, so it's easily cooking, but still needs to be cooked, and whether it is in 10 minutes or 50 minutes, or you can make 8 minutes out of it. Of course, you're getting closer than to pasta treatments, but those things are possible. There are differences between varieties and between genetics in that sense. So there is room for, let's say, breeding for more convenience, so to say.
No, that's absolutely correct. But again, the whole chain is involved. Product innovation starts with breeding, yes, and the correct variety for it. But there are coming up every day new technologies, how to prepare it, how to pre-cook, pre-fry, pre-whatever. Yeah? So there are very interesting technologies coming up, and that changes the view of a breeder sometimes as well. That we say, okay, if that is going to be the process in the future, then maybe we need to do something with the variety itself. So that is a constant process going on.
The lads have pretty much covered everything, but I suppose it's if you're creating a new product like that you know that you have an end user for every off product that you have, so that you're not going to have the food waste in the first place, and taking an angle like that from it. But the lads have covered most of the angles I was about to speak about.
Okay. Well, we have time maybe for one last question. We're back on time there.
Thank you for that, Chair. My name is Ian Barker from the International Potato Centre. Interesting, in a parallel session, my colleague Gabby Burgos was talking about our development of the high iron biofortified potato. And we're pleased to say we've released our first variety with high iron, 50% more iron than the varieties that those farmers are now eating and consuming, and this is in Peru. Part of that story is that iron is more bioavailable from potato, in any case, than leafy vegetables. Work we did with nutrition colleagues in ETH in Zurich. It's a story we haven't told yet, the bioavailability of iron in potato. We should tell that story. But coming to a question for Gerard, could you see yourself selling something like that, a potato variety specifically aimed at nutrition, high iron? Could that find a place in the market?
Yeah, if there's, let's say, anything with a special trait, if there's market for that, and you have to find your market for that, but that's for sure, for this type of products, there is a market. I can see us selling that, absolutely. And also, you have to see that in the total context of it, of course, but any specialities, that's what we have to bring to the market. Even if it doesn't sell that much, we have to show with that what the creativity is that we can bring as a potato supplies, as a potato world. So absolutely, answer is yes.
Any more comments?
One more example. Yeah. Low glycemic index. Same story. There's a lot of research done. And there are already varieties on the market which have a low glycemic index. It's still a question of proof of concept. But that would be varieties suitable for diabetics, for instance. Or take colored varieties, the color in the potato. There is a lot of research going on. I think there is still a lot more than just iron. It is a topic, yes, but the research is actually discovering more and more valuable ingredients of potatoes and think about how to use them protein. Yeah, we have in Europe we have a protein initiative. Is it a question? Can we extract the protein from the potatoes? Can we bring up the percentage of protein, etc.? So I think there are many ingredients in the potato which will be discovered in the future, and we will have to think of how to use them actually commercially.
So Ross, any market for
Yeah,
iron-enriched crisps?
So I'll bring that to, in Ireland, we're very much variety driven. So in Europe and in other countries it's different. It's a white potato and you can nearly have several different varieties being sold. So if you were to launch that in Ireland and have a specific name, it would be a niche. You'd have sales, but they wouldn't be terrific sales. If you took our rooster and you increased the iron levels by 50%, that'd be very marketable and it'd go across all retailers. So same as in the States, if you were in the States and you increase the russet potato, or in the UK the King Edward or Mars Piper, there's where your angle would go. But if you were coming onto our market here in Ireland with a variety that we don't know that's increased, grand, we could create it. It'd be a niche though. You would have sales, but they'd be niche and they'd be slow to build. But they would build.
Okay, interesting view, yeah. Well, I'll close the proceedings. I'd like to thank all the panelists for the excellent presentations. And also, I suppose, I think the message here is very positive for the future, actually. We have an immediate problem, I suppose, certainly here in Europe in terms of what's going on and the increase in energy costs. It's everywhere in the world, but particularly here in Europe, we're feeling it. But nevertheless, I think the overall take here, as you probably saw, it was really the future is bright, as was put. So I'd like to thank also the audience for the questions and for being here, for your interest. And we stop now for a break and then lunch, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd ask if there is anyone who has technical tour tickets and you don't think you're going to use your technical tour tickets, if you give them back at the registration desk, they'll be able to reallocate them to people who'll be able to use them. So if you aren't going to use your technical tour tickets, please return them to the registration desk where they'll be reallocated. Thank you.